Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar today in partnership with Tive. My name's Neil Perry and I'm the managing editor here at Supply Chain Magazine. Now today's session is called Boost Supply Chain Visibility with Today's Tech. So let's dig into that, find out exactly what that means and what we're discussing today. So in short, this really is uncovering a bit of a secret weapon in a modern supply chain, and that's using transportation data to really drive intelligence. Now, that might be easier said than done, you might think. Well, today we're discussing the absolutely pivotal role of visibility in boosting the resilience of modern supply chains. To do that, we want to explore just how crucial the visibility technology is in digital transformation, and we want to do it through looking at it all through the lens of a case study, which is often the best way of doing this. Arvato, they're a leading logistics provider specializing in next-gen cell and gene therapies and pharmaceuticals, and how they've used real-time shipment visibility technology to optimize their operations. So we've got a lot to cover today. And there's so little time to do it in, 40 minutes or so. So let's meet our guests. I'm delighted to be joined by Dennis Perget, Head of Strategic Accounts EMEA at Tive, by Alex Guillen, Global SME, Life Science and Pharma at Tive, and Bastian Friedrich, Head of Cell and Gene Supply Chains at Arvato. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. How are we doing today?
So far, so good. Thanks. Pleasure being here.
Thanks for being here.
You're very
good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're all very, very welcome indeed. Well, we're going to look into some of the challenges that are traditionally related to this sort of area, some of the solutions. We've got lots of questions to get into, but I think context is vital. We need to understand a little bit more about the technology and a little bit about the particular and very pressing challenges that are faced within the pharma industry in particular. So I understand we've got a few slides just to kick things off, give us a little bit of background knowledge so we're all on the same page. And Dennis, I believe you have the pleasure of kicking things off before we pass on to Bastian. Dennis, I'll let you take us through those slides quickly.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having us here and having the opportunity to discuss open about these topics. I mean, the topic of today is to boost supply chain visibility with today's tech. And if we look at this one, I mean, the numbers are speaking from itself. And this is, let's say, actually coming from the State of Visibility Survey report from 2024, where 80% of the supply chain leaders recognize the importance of real-time visibility. That said, and yet only 53% are leveraging real-time IoT, tracking their shipments today, which is quite a challenge still in the market. Next, please. Yeah, and to discuss about that and to look into specifics, I mean, we want to look into the visibility in the context of new and or critical supply chains based on the example from Bastian Friedrich from Arvato, which is around cell and gene logistics.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dennis and Alex, for having Arvato here with you in this webinar. So I'm really keen to give you some more insights about how Arvato is actually using today's tech to create much more visibility in the area of, in this case, cell and gene therapies that we are supporting here from the supply chain perspective. So giving here a bit of the context, what are we really talking about? Because I can imagine for some people here in the webinar, cell and gene therapies are quite new, and it seems like a big buzzword. So what is it about? So cell and gene therapies, it's a new form of therapy. They're also called advanced therapies or next generation therapies, which have the huge potential to cure a patient with a single administration. So very often these people are having a serious disease of cancer, for example, and typically they get one chemotherapy after the other for years. And in this case, cell and gene therapies really have the potential where they use the patient's own cells to develop a patient individual therapy, which has then the potential to treat this patient with a single therapy. So how does it actually work? So we simplified the patient journey here to make everyone being here on the same page. So it started for sure with the enrollment of the patient. So the patient will be registered for this, and then we are taking care about that the coverage from the health insurance company from certain payers is guaranteed. And then the real magic, so to say, really starts. So from the ill patient, cells are collected. That's called the apheresis step here. And these cells are, so to say, the starting material to create a patient individual treatment to cure him or her. So after having this apheresis step taking place, then the cells are typically transported in a fresh or in frozen environment that can be from 2 to 8 degrees or with the use of liquid nitrogen, so very deep frozen, to a certain manufacturing center. And here, these cells are modified or adjusted that they are later on able to identify ill cells or patient cells in the patient's own body with the target to destroy them, so to destroy cancer cells. So after having the manufacturing step taking place, that can take up to 2 or 3 weeks, then the cells, or in this case, the final product, is shipped again to the hospital where the administration of the product to the patient is taking place. Here again, that can be done in a fresh or in a frozen environment. And in some cases, it is even needed to precondition the patient. So what does it mean? The patient is getting mobilized that his or her body is able to accept the treatment. That can be a last chemotherapy, for example, and then the final treatment will then be administered to the patient. So, and then typically with such treatments, then there is like a post engagement needed. So a long-term monitoring to make sure that everything runs quite smoothly. So I think you already got a good feeling about it, that this year is really complete new. That's also very different to the traditional pharma supply chain. Why is it the case? So we are really having here a closed loop supply chain. It's very patient-centric or patient-led, because the patient is providing the starting material and then later on receiving his or her individualized treatment later on. The product, I said, they are transported, for example, in a fresh or frozen way. They are very temperature sensitive. So you have to maintain certain temperature ranges, making sure that there are no excursions. Talking about individual treatment, you can imagine these treatments are typically very costly. And right now, it's still a very low volume product. So on the one hand side, due to the fact that it's patient individual, on the other hand side, right now, there are only about 50 commercialized therapies out there available, but there is a big pipeline of therapies going to come there. And when you are talking about individual therapies, it's for sure essential that the right patient also receives the right individual therapy. And in this context, we are talking about chain of identity and chain of custody. So having full visibility, what kind of actions have been taken place with the patient's products, when did it take place, who handled it, etc., so that we can ensure a so-called V2V traceability. So really from collecting the product of the patient to the administration of the final product again. So, and when you are having here a look at this kind of patient journey, there are a lot of different stakeholders involved: healthcare professionals, payers, the patient for sure, logistics companies who handle the product, people at the manufacturing side, at CDMO side. So a lot of people, a lot of data is generated, and we're having a quite complex process flow, and therefore it's also really essential and mandatory to share information with each other, to share data, to get to know where is the patient, has the collection already taken place, etc., in order to create a smooth patient journey at the end. I think we now already have a good overview where or what cell and gene therapy is about, and now coming back now a bit more to the type of technology which is like an enabler here in this space. Let me briefly tell you what kind of observations that we made. So I briefly said right now there are only about 50 therapies available on the market, but the pipeline of therapies which are still in the clinic phase, it's enormous. So we are talking about nearly 2,000 therapies who have the potential to come to the market and cure patients in the near future. That's really amazing. But on the other hand, you can also imagine when so many therapies are coming to the market, we then also need other technology, other infrastructure who enable the people, the workforce to manage this kind of tsunami, how we call it. So, and then having so many therapies, a lot of different stakeholders, etc., sharing data with each other, we also need to find or implement the right technologies. And we right now observe that hyper-connected platforms, so-called orchestration platforms, will be like enabler or even pioneering here the industry to share trusted information with the right partners here in the patient journey in order to create much more visibility for the treatments. And the third pillar that we also observed here is that technology, especially smart devices, IoT devices, that are really necessary to, on the one hand side, to get real-time visibility, for example, about the shipment, but especially to be aware about the sensitivity, about the conditions of the shipment. That's what we right now also observe from our clients, that really mandatory to create this kind of visibility. And last but not least, from our point of view, it's much more about having the right purpose and also the motivation within the people who interact in this supply chain. So we have to make sure that we work very closely together with our clients, with partners here, but also with competitors who partially maybe take over certain activities in the supply chain. And only when we do so, working closely together, we can then also achieve this one common goal to curing patients. So, and if you want to sum it up here, I'm totally convinced that sponsors and manufacturers of these therapies, that's also their task to build, on the one side, to find the right partners and then to build the right ecosystem, which enables them to support personalized therapies in the right way to help curing more patients out there. And Arvato, in this case, we built a technology platform with the colleagues here of TIVE. So again, Alex, Dennis, thanks a lot for that, where we are making use of the advanced technology within our highly sensitive treatments to create much more visibility, not only for us, but also for our clients where we operate their supply chain. So what's Arvato in this context doing? So very briefly, we are a 3PL logistics company, and we provide integrated and healthcare-specific supply chain solutions for pharma, biotech, but also for medtech companies. So we, on the one side, have control tower and customer service activities to steer the entire supply chain and manage the shipments across all stakeholders. We have a network of own global warehouses that we operate, where we store products in different kind of temperature ranges and that we support there. Within this network, we label these products, provide secondary packaging activities, for example, together with thermal packaging solution that is then later on used for the transportation. So we provide on top of that transportation services, but we do it carrier independently. So we do not run our own fleet, but having integrations to more than 100 carriers. And last but not least, we also have integrations to orchestration platforms that are typically used in the area of cell and gene therapies to orchestrate and streamline the entire process from the technology perspective. And so we also build our own ecosystem here in this area, and a very specialized solution to support biotech companies and manufacturers who operate, who manufacture therapies in this case. So, and our approach here, just to round that out, really to providing all services out of one hand, helping them to bring these novel therapies faster to the market, and last but not least, then also helping them to reduce their total cost of ownership in this context with sustainable supply chain services here.
Okay, Bastian, Dennis, thank you very much indeed. A very thorough run through to get us set up for today. And you can really see the unique challenges there are in this kind of supply chain. Obviously, there's plenty, and anyone in a supply chain background can learn from this, but there's some particularly acute challenges here, particularly when it comes to time, temperature sensitivity, and so forth here. So let's look at some of the traditional challenges we have in achieving proper supply chain visibility. Let's break some of those down. From all of your experience, what are the main blockers for people actually really achieving that holy grail of knowing where their stuff is, where it's going, and all the rest of it? Alex, shall we start with you on that to bring you into the conversation?
Sure. Thank you very much. Well, excellent presentation, by the way. To be honest, it's one thing to see the slides, and the other thing is to actually hear somebody like you, Bastian, with all the experience in the field. I think this is what it has to be. The biggest challenge going to be, just as Bastian mentioned, is that it's almost a different mindset in the supply chain. The industry is used to a more linear kind of distribution, and where you have a manufacturer and you have a receiver on the other side. And then if we see the evolution of that, there were times where, let's say, somebody would be responsible of one part of that supply chain and say, well, from here, there is not my responsibility. That what happened before is not my responsibility. So through years, people have to take more engagement and commitment to actually make that supply chain as extended, take that responsibility from manufacturing all the way to the end user. But then before that, what goes into the product being manufactured? And after that, what happened with that product going to the patient? What makes the biggest challenge here is exactly going, like Bastian mentioned, it's not just about the linearity, but that kind of reverse loop that has to be built in that loop particularly is completely different than what the industry has been done in the past. And that loop to work has to match exactly what it came back, right? So the other thing that is being attached to it in terms of challenges of security, because you have to have that vein to vein really, really well followed. Security is a big thing, because otherwise the whole building can go down. If the whole system can go down if that is not perfect. There is no room for a mistake, because it could end up in hurting a patient. So there is security on one side, and there is a mindset on the other side. I think those are the things that we need to work on. And collaboration, of course, is going to make a big difference on that.
Yeah, Alex, I think you hit the nail on the head there. In a lot of industries, if we're talking about a shipment going missing or being delayed or going to the wrong port, it's paperwork. It might be profit. It's inconvenient. But if we're talking about patients, there's a different level of importance here, I suppose. But what are the risks if you don't have that proper visibility in this particular area? I'll start with you on this one, Bastian. They must be incredibly acute if you don't have the proper visibility of knowing where these shipments are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we must always remember ourselves that we are dealing, or on the one hand side, that there is a patient at the end of the supply chain or at the patient journey who is looking for a treatment. So, and in this particular case, so in terms of cell and gene therapies, we have an individual treatment. It is very sensitive in terms of the time, but also in terms of the temperature. So we cannot deal or really getting a problem when we have a lot of temperature excursions here, because then the cells will die or will be destroyed and the treatment cannot be used. So, and we also need to understand that there are some patients out there who are waiting months, sometimes even years, to getting this kind of treatment. And therefore, I think it's very obvious that we must ensure that everything really runs smoothly. And how can we ensure that? I think we can only ensure it when we have full transparency along the entire supply chain with all partners, so to know what is really going on. So has the cells been collected from the patient already? Has the product been cryopreserved already? Has it been picked up? Where is it? Is it already in transit? Is it still waiting at the apheresis center site, or already transported to a manufacturing site? because when we are conducting these kind of activities, there is always a follow-on activity after. So just an example, after the collection has taken place, then the manufacturing will start. So they need to for sure know when will the product arrive. So because in the manufacturing department, they also prepare everything that they can really start. Because when we have a certain shift or delay in some kind of supply chain activities, that can have a tremendous effect on the patient. So it can be that the patient will actually, to be very clear here, will receive the product too late. And then,
they're not just a number; they're an individual. Absolutely. I am wanting to push on if I can, Bastian, because I know we have a certain amount of time. For me, a key word from this whole discussion is optimization. It's really finding every single way to improve the process from start to finish. But before we get on to some of those solutions and the next steps that could be taken, I really want to just take one look at the limitations of more of older, more legacy systems or methodologies of supply chain sort of management and visibility. Dennis, I hope I get the statistic right. I believe was it 53% not using the correct kind of more modern technologies. Let's do a little comparison here. What are the main limitations of some of the more legacy systems that, as we can see, still very widely in use?
Well, I would say it is 53% what are coming from the report, right? They're all over the markets. It's not especially in pharma or life science, right? If you would look at pharma and life science, I mean, the legacy more or less is a temperature reading device, like a data log or something, which you pull out at the end of the shipment if you have access to it, put it into your PC if you are allowed to put it in your PC, and then get the data, right? And then hopefully everything is in sync. I think looking at what Bastian was talking about, right? This is nothing what in a complex supply chain like that should be accepted down the road, right? I think the challenge is especially, I would say, new areas or early adopters in this space, right? Like Bastian with cell and gene, or let's say specialty logistics. I mean, this is where real time gets more and more important, and actually compliance regulatory around the globe are getting more and more strict and increasingly strict on having this transparency because of the patient, because of the temperature, because making sure everything is going right? But on the other side, you have potentially SOPs like operating processes in place, especially in pharma and life science, because everything is so highly regulated, which often make it quite complex and easy to move from legacy or older fashioned type of technology to new technology, which is available on the market and is, let's say, used heavily in other markets out of these highly regulated markets already.
Well, let's move on to some of the solutions and the newer technology that is out there, because it is incredibly exciting. I find it absolutely fascinating the amount of progress there's been in this area. One point I'd want to touch on first, though, is collaboration. There are so many moving parts in these supply chains. There are so many people involved, and everyone has to do everything spot on to make sure, as you were saying, Bastian, that the quality of the product is arriving on time, at the right temperature, and so on. How do we go about using this technology to ensure there is that high quality collaboration between every part of this supply chain? How does the technology allow that? And I'll put that out to all of you because I'm fascinated. How do we make sure everyone works together effectively?
So I think collaboration is in general, or first of all, a kind of a mindset. So people and organizations must understand what value collaboration can really provide, especially in this context. So I think when everybody is there on the same page and willing to collaborate, we already achieve a really, really big thing, to be very honest. Because collaboration in some cases also means that you have to work a bit closer with your competitors together. I think here in this area, when you collaborate on the supply chain perspective, the differentiator will always be the product that we are, or the treatment that will be delivered, not how you organize your supply chain. And I think to creating more visibility in the supply chain, I think technology is one thing. Yeah, like here the technology of TIFE, for example, which enables you to do so. But also in general, when companies are more willing to share also data from their supply chain operations with other partners, that can also help to create more visibility here in general.
And this is a good point, Bastian, if I may add, right? I mean, I think there's like two sides of the coin, where one is, let's say, I mean, this kind of global disruption. If you just think about pandemics like COVID, for example, or supply chain complexity, right? Where supply chains are getting more and more complex because there's a lot of suppliers potentially involved. There are partners involved. We are talking about global networks across the globe, right? But on the other side, you of course have, let's say, the technology like an Internet of Things or a blockchain or any kind of analytics, which make it easier to collaborate, to collect the data, to analyze the data, right, in real time, and also to share it throughout the entire supply chain, which then at the end of the day should make it easier, should make it more robust and stable, and at the end should be the best for the customer or the patient in this case to get the most out of it in time.
Another thing I'm particularly fascinated about is how customizable a technology solution can be. Because I guess everyone has different demands, everyone has different interests. I guess, Alex, Dennis, this is probably one more for the both of you. How important is it that the technology solution that's presented is right for the customer who's using it? How much flexibility is there to make sure that the benefit of this progress is truly realized?
No, it is one of the, I think the key part, in my opinion, regarding customizing solution is that we have seen how fast technology moved in the last 5-6 years, right? So whatever we design today might be obsolete 5 years from now. And that curve is exponential, right? So now if I am a company and I rely on my own technology, I'm doomed to fail, because whatever I'm doing, somebody's going to do something better. And eventually 3, 4, 5 years from now, I will never be able to catch up with that. As far as I run, there's always some big company that's going to do something better in terms of technology improvement, in terms of technology advancement. So going to what we were saying earlier, cooperation is a different mindset. Instead of thinking I have to be faster than my competitor, I have to run faster than my competitor, somehow in order for this supply chain to work, the mindset should be, okay, how do we work together so that we are sure that we all get to a certain stage? And I know that in the Western world, of course, it's a bit difficult because competition is always good, they say. But in the world of supply chain, competition is not necessarily always good. Competition sometimes can be a really big issue. The beauty about the supply chain in the life science and biotech, and Bastian will agree with me, it's a community. It's actually a community of people. We know each other very well. We have been there for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And we realize that there is something that Bastian just said, there has to be, you mentioned purpose and motivation to make this work, right? So the fact that it's already a community, the fact that we know each other, the fact that we actually have the same goal, I think is going to help. It's going to make it more possible to actually work more cooperatively instead of competing against each other. There's already a big benefit that we all know each other in this industry very closely. So I think just by shaking hands sometimes, having a drink from time to time with a guy that we call sometimes competitor, is we can share information without, of course, breaking any rules or laws. But I think that we can be in a position of improving that supply chain. And there is eventually technology is going so fast that there is almost, you will say sky's the limit, in terms of how much we can do.
So it's a refreshing change. Oh, Dennis, do carry on.
Yeah, if I may add to that one, right, what Alex Bastian said is 100% correct, right? But I think at the end of the day, it should be technology which is easy to use, right? Because only if it's easy to use and adaptable to the customer processes or whatever, it will be used, right? And it can be implemented. So it doesn't matter if it's a tracker which is easy to use to start with, right? To attach to a shipment, to get the data out in real time, potentially to integrate all the data in customer-specific IT ecosystems. I think this is a differentiator, right? And make these things easier for customers that they can get on a fingertip what they need and what the patient requires at the end of the day. This is important too. It's not about the tech, it's also, let's say, how are the things playing together properly.
Dennis, I'm not sure if you can see my notes from where you are today, but you've led me on perfectly to what I want to talk about next, and that is implementation. And that's a word I always like to bring up in these kind of conversations, because you can have the best technology, you can have the best solution at hand, but if you don't know how to use it, you may as well not have it half the time. For all of you, I'd love just to get a short piece of advice about advice you would give for people if they're wanting to go ahead on one of these sort of digital transformations of their supply chains. I don't mind if you're in life science and biotech or work in a completely different sort of supply chain. There's a lot of comparable points here. What advice would you have for people who are wanting to go about these kind of digital transformations to really optimize their supply chain? Alex, should we start with you, please?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is to start earlier. The earlier you start, the more understanding you're going to have. I was part of a panel in Logipharma actually a couple of weeks ago in Lyon, and the panel I was assisting was about digitalization and how early should we adopt this in internal organization. And it's very refreshing to see that the industry is moving in that direction, moving faster than usual, even for pharma and life science, which is typically more conservative. But start early. Starting early means leaders in the supply chain are going to see what is available out there. You have to see what is possible. Sometimes I'm in meetings and people are saying, I wish there was this, that. And I say, you're wishing what? Actually, it's there. You just have to go and get it. There's a lot of solutions are out there in the market, but then we go back to our office, go on our routines. So allocate resources to go out and research. Allocate resources for your supply chain team looks long term as well. Don't be just so fixed on the tomorrow. Tomorrow is very important, but this is about the patient. It takes time. And the last thing I want to do about that is I think that COVID was in the end an example that this is possible to cooperate, to make this happen, and to go fast. We did things in supply chain that were impossible to imagine, especially with shipments at minus 70 degrees Celsius, dry ice across the globe. Nobody thought this could be possible, but we happened, right? But it doesn't have to be a pandemic that triggers this. I think we can think a bit more evolved way than that and say, where are we going to be 5 years from now? So we are not taken by surprise by any other thing.
Very true. And Alex, I'm sure we've all been in those meetings, and I can almost feel the wry smiles from our audience from afar. Bastian, if we can come to you next on that, the advice on people wanting to implement these sort of digital transformations.
Yeah, so if I put it in one sentence, I would really say think big and start small. So especially when you're working in a bigger corporation, so topic like digital transformation and in general, a big topic in general. But if you want to convince your own organization why this is really needed, for example, to implement real-time data loggers, for example, pick a smaller project out there, just implement a couple of them, and then really showing them what kind of visibility, for example, you can provide, Then I think when you show this kind of references or this outcome, your organization will be convinced anyway. And then I think there will be other projects who are also having a certain interest in this kind of disruption or transformation anyway. And then it's getting bigger and bigger by nature. So really think big, what you have a vision in mind, what you want to achieve later on, but then looking for a smaller project to get started with.
Yeah, Bastian, I think that's both incredibly simple but incredibly good advice. I think a lot of people can learn from that. Think big but start small. Dennis, if we can come to you quickly on this last before we just get to the submitted questions, which I want to spend a little bit of time on. So your advice on implementation for this kind of digital transformation?
Yeah, I would just say get going, right? I mean, get devices in hand, get a kind of representative setup in place here and test it, right? Because, I mean, just Logipharma showed it again. We have so many customers who came back and say, hey, we didn't know what's going on out there, right? Because it's getting complex, it's getting not transparent, right? But having all the data and having all the insights on the fingertip is just a differentiator, right? Doesn't matter if it's getting information about flight routes, getting information about delays, about anything like that, right? I mean, the data is there. You just need to be open and receive it.
Absolutely right. As I said, we do have some submitted questions we want to get through quite quickly. I've got a whole list of them. I'll get to as many of them as I possibly can. First one is for you, Dennis, and that's given the current global climate and market uncertainties, why do you believe that prioritising and investing in improved visibility within supply chains is more imperative now than ever before?
Well, I mean, at short, I would say yes, it's absolutely important, right? But looking a little bit deeper in that one, I mean, that improving the visibility with supply chain has become increasingly important and imperative due to several factors. I mean, we talked about COVID, right? Global disruption. Think about supply chain complexity, right? Where modern supply chains have become incredibly complex, involving numerous suppliers, partners, logistic networks across the globe, right? Basti talked about customer or patient expectations, right? I mean, think about today's consumer, right? I mean, they are demanding transparency and accountability. I mean, they want to know where their products are coming from, where have they been made, are they aligned with ethical and sustainable practices, right? Thinking about pharma, think about regulatory compliances, where even governments around the world are increasingly implementing stricter regulations regarding supply chain visibility and transparency, right? Think about the risk again when it comes to patient. Think about risk management. I mean, where supply chain disruption can have significant input, in Basti's case, on patient, but also on financial implications from increased costs, loss of revenue, loss of market share, right? And this is where technology advancements like IoT, like blockchain, like advanced analytics can make it easy to collect the data, to analyze the data, and to share it through your entire supply chain. And then at the end of the day, I mean, the competitive advantage, right, where companies invest in improving supply chain visibility within their supply chains, right? I mean, they can respond faster to changes in demand. They can reduce lead times. They can optimize their inventory turns and levels, right? And at the end of the day, provide better customer service, which is key in pharma and life science. Just to turn, let's say, to increase market share and profitability. So I think this is a lot, but I mean, to conclude, I would say prioritizing and investing in improved visibility within the supply chain is crucial and helps companies to mitigate risk, to meet customer expectations, to comply with the upcoming regulations, and of course, to gain a competitive advantage in the market by applying all of that and thinking about that properly.
It's just being fit for purpose, really, for the modern world, really. We've got plenty of other questions to get through, so I'll try and get to as many of these as possible. Bastian, will come to you next, please. And that is, what supply chain challenges do you foresee as cell and gene therapy scale? And how does Arvato plan to leverage visibility technology to try and mitigate some of those potential disruptions and further enhance its operational capabilities in the future?
That's a pretty long question.
It is. I apologize.
I hope that I can cover everything. So when you have a look at the market, the number of commercialized therapies in both the US and the European market is still very limited. So in total, I think about 50 commercially available therapies. But the pipeline, so to say, the therapies who have the potential to be commercialized in the next years, that's about 2,000 therapies. So it's really like a tsunami that is going to come here to this market. And that's, from my point of view, the major challenge that we face right now. Because today, a lot of these therapies are really, or the supply chain of these therapies are managed paper-based or really human-based and not really digital integrated. That works so far when we are still in low volume clinical phases or only having these tiny numbers of commercial therapies. But later on, when the volume increases and when these therapies are no longer a third line or a fourth line treatment and becoming first or second line, then we are talking about completely different numbers of patients that we need to support. And then the complexity really increases, and we must ensure that the entire system does not collapse. So therefore, I think dealing with these topics, outsourcing, so finding the right supply chain partners, the right ecosystem in general is definitely one answer on that. also having certain control towers in place, so dedicated teams which are able to support the entire patient journey and the journey of the shipment. That's definitely crucial. So really having dedicated teams, organizations who just focus on that one, to manage exceptions, to take care about it. And I think what's also very, very important and also a mandatory requirement from the manufacturers and sponsors, for example, to have proactive supply chain companies in place, so that communicate proactively, that work proactively, especially in times of any kind of excursions, unexpected events that occur in the supply chain, because that will happen anyway. And that's something that we especially feel when we talk to our clients, that proactive communication it's really getting mandatory. And that also means providing information about these kind of shipments in real time. That's no longer a differentiator, I would say. That's really a requirement that's mandatory to create this kind of visibility here.
Yeah, absolutely critical now. And Alex, we'll just go to one more question for you, because I'm conscious of the time. I know how many of our audience tend to catch up with these sessions on lunch breaks or when they're traveling. So we're trying to keep to time if we possibly can. And Alex, I am going to put you on the spot with this last question. It's the last submitted question we have. So I sort of apologize for that, but I'm the host, I'm allowed to. So the last question is, if so many supply chain leaders are recognizing the importance of real-time visibility today, why are there still so many that haven't implemented it? And why are certain industries, especially ones as critical as we're discussing today, like life sciences, lagging behind in this regard?
Yeah, I think it's knowledge. Understand that's it. I mean, I mentioned earlier, we are carried out by our work, our responsibilities. So supply chain leaders right now, they have one mission, and they think that mission is to actually take a product from A to Z or from A to D. And as long as there is no issue, well, why do we change something? I have no problem, it's okay. But guess what? Problems do come. And just as it's too bad that sometimes we wait for the problem and then we act. We have seen it in the industry. It's like, okay, now we have to do something because we just lost $25 million in a pallet, or we just lost this. And or even worse, we just made a big mistake in terms of the loop and their in personalized medicine. So sometimes we just are carried on. I think leaders, CEOs, vice presidents are carried on with their daily business. So this is what I go back a little bit to what I was saying before. Allocate time to step back. Really reason, not just for tomorrow, reason for 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and allocate resources for that. I mean, and if CEOs will allocate resources to look at technology, look at the future, look what's happening, look how they can improve. Why to do in 10 days when maybe you're able to do it in 1 day? Especially in the scaling right now, like Bastian was saying, if there's going to be a tsunami of cell and gene therapies, we need to have systems that are going to work with such a number, and that cannot be paperwork. And the last thing I want to say is, also online on what Bastian was saying, we can be proactive right now. We can. The companies can. There is not only TIFE. Companies are building control towers that are really, really efficient. Technology allows it to you. So being proactive and being able to save a shipment is more than just saving money. It's more than just having the data. It's actually, if we save a shipment, then it's sustainable. If we save a shipment, then we save patients. If we save a shipment, we can do. And that's the key. The key is that we can say, we can be proactive, we can take action and not let that shipment go to waste. Whether it's financial, but also, if a patient was waiting. So I think take a step back, look into the future, look technologies, put resources there, and not just look at the next day. And I think if there's this mindset of in the supply chain world and in the C-level in the organizations, then there is a chance that we're going to move faster and more efficiently, even in pharma and life science.
Absolutely, Alex. Thank you very much indeed. That's a lovely way to wrap things up. I cannot believe how quickly the time has gone today. We have covered so much ground. We could almost do a sequel on this. I could talk to you all day about this. Return of the Life Science Supply Chain. Not a great film title. Probably would work for a second webinar. So we'll leave that for another day. So Alex, Dennis, Bastian, thank you so much for your time. You've been incredibly generous with your expertise and knowledge. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. This recording of the webinar will be available again shortly, so you can come back, watch again, catch up on any bits you missed, or share it with anyone else you think who might find this as useful as you have. Thank you again to all our speakers. Alex, Dennis, Bastian, thank you very much. And to you for watching. Bye for now.